I've got a stack of 2x10 20-footers behind me. I'm going to use one and a half of them as ledgers, and the rest will be cut up into joists. The ledger needs to be straight because it's going to be establishing the line of the ceiling below and the line of the floor above. So I don't want to be fighting crowns or anything like that. I want it to be a nice straight board. I've got the perfect board because not only is it straight, but it's got a defect in it that means I don't want to cut it up and use it for a joist. Let me show you. So this is a second growth Douglas fir 2x10, 20 feet long, nice and straight. But right here in the middle, it's got this knot. Now that's kind of a nasty knot, but the thing that really makes it a problem is that we've started a crack right here, which means that this is a good example of why engineers hate to specify with lumber. Because lumber is a radically imperfect and variable building material, and an engineer can't tell, and he's not on the site to say, wait, don't use that, because the strength of that member is diminished by a pitch seam or a knot cluster or slope of grain or any number of defects that will reduce the strength of a board. Now, the West Coast Lumber Grading Association is supposed to cover all that, but those boys either missed it on this or it was within the allowable specification for a number 2 and better board anyway. But it's fine, because I'm going to nail it to the wall and then screw it to the wall with structural screws to hold up one half of this floor. Now here's another thing. When I drew this, I drew these joists in at 19.2 inches on center. I'm using a 19 and 3/16 inch layout on these joists. It's 3/4 inch decking. It's not very far across there. 2 feet would not be strong enough to suit me, although it would be code compliant. 16 inches is throwing away, in today's dollars, you know, $100 worth of extra joists. And so I'm using the 19 and 3/16 inch layout on the joists. That's a legitimate spacing for material that has to coincide with an 8-foot sheet substrate. But when I get right down to it, I just can't make myself do it because 16 inches is so much sturdier, and I don't want this floor to be springy. And even if the joists would not be springy at 19.2, 3/4 inch tongue and groove decking just would feel a little spongy, even subconsciously spongy under your feet. And I just hate it. So I think I can stretch these out, use some different material for the backing and the rim joist at the ends, and get by with the joists that I have on hand, because I don't want to spend their money unnecessarily, but I don't want to walk away with a floor that feels like a hybrid between a shop floor and a trampoline. See this, but I've nailed little supporting plates. It's not even a ledger, it's just a shelf. I've nailed a shelf to the bottom of the beam and the bottom of the ledger. What that does is it gives me a platform to set these joists on, so I don't need a guy holding the other end. It takes, 3 minutes to nail up the shelf, 3 minutes to pull it down, and 5 minutes to pull the nails. That's a lot less money than paying somebody to hold the end of the board while you're putting it in place and then walking back to get another one. So a nail gun and a block or a shelf or a brace, like about 9 times out of 10 will save money compared to having someone waiting around for you to tell them what they need to do to help you do a simple task. So reinforcements have arrived. Asher is back here helping Aaron. And between the two of them, it's an earth-moving operation. So the advantage of nailing a couple shelves underneath the ends of your ceiling joist is by yourself, like I was just describing. You can, if you put your ladder in the right spot, and if you crown them first, so you know which way they're going to end up laying once you turn them up, you can do this. So with just a little advanced planning, you can wear yourself right out. This whole thing about putting up ledges and ledgers and temporary supports so that you can hang material overhead by yourself only works with a nail gun. I mean, it's the nail gun that is, in effect, the extra man on the job. So with these things in place and the crown marked, but no hangers on the end and no structural screws through the ledger, I just take 1 or 2 nails, put it on the layout, and it's hung. Now that's not the attachment that's going to be used to hold up the floor, it's just the attachment that's going to be used to hold the joist in place before I make it bulletproof. So with the joists up there laying on those shelves and toe-nailed into place, and they are just toe-nailed, it's time to tear the shelves down, back the nails out, and start thinking about 2 things. 1, fastening that ledger to the wall so that it's going to hold the weight of the whole world, and 2, slipping the joist hangers around the joists, now they're in the right position, and fastening them up. Easy. Actually, this gives me a fine opportunity to demonstrate how a Burke bar is both a pry bar and a sledgehammer. Well, it's a beautiful fresh morning, and I get to put the joist hangers underneath the ends of these little 10-foot 2x10 joists. I'll throw them up there and sort of pin them there a little bit with a nail gun, and then come back and put in the approved fasteners, more or less according to Simpson's requirement, so that these things are firmly in place. But before I sheet it, it's time to plumb and line the exterior walls on this place. Now, as you're telling yourself right now, with the sheeting on the walls like I have it, of course they're plumb, Wadsworth, and yes they are, the corners are plumb. But it's critically important to establish straight between the plumb corners and brace it there before I really take another step. Because once I put the 3/4 inch tongue and groove OSB on this little floor diaphragm, this whole building is going to become rigid on this end, and if those exterior walls are not straight, then they will never be straight. So I'm going to kind of put the hangers on here well enough that I can walk around up there without regretting it, and get to work stretching some lines and checking for straight. So I'm attaching this ledger with structural GRK screws. They're big bad boys. They're a little shorter than I would like, so I'm going to end up countersinking them. So the installation goes like this. I take a drill bit that is the diameter of the root diameter of the screw. That's the diameter of the shaft, not counting the threads. Then I'm taking a 3/4 inch spade bit and countersinking about halfway through the 1.5 inch board. And then I'm taking my trusty impact driver and running those things in nice and tight. Got about 2¼ inches of embedment. There's going to be about 1 million of them along here. This thing's going to be very seriously strong. I am ready to make sure and to brace into position this wall straight. Going to do that with 1.5 inch offset blocks, stretch the string tight, and with a ladder and this decking and that plank over there, I can get all the way along that wall and gauge it and make sure that it is just plain straight. I'll get some braces on the outside, maybe one on the inside to hold it there, and then switch my attention to the 2 long walls to do the same thing. It does one no good to snap lines and be careful in placing the walls on the lines if the walls don't stay on the lines while you're doing the work. The quickest, easiest way to hold it in the right spot on a concrete floor is with a powder actuated fastening device. This little 22 caliber Jim Dandy uses essentially a blank cartridge to drive a driver down on top of a high carbon steel concrete nail and drive it right into the concrete. So obviously there are some risks inherent with this, but if you pay attention, you don't get in a hurry, and you make sure there's nobody around in the danger zone, you can get some work done. Now these are yellow shots, designated by the color yellow. Now in the Duo Fast system, which works pretty good, not as good as Hilti, but pretty good, a yellow shot, you know, it just doesn't quite drive this 3-inch nail all the way down. It almost doesn't matter because shear strength is what we're after, and we've got shear strength right now. But we're going to drive that up with a second nail, with a second charge in just a second. In the meantime, I'm going to throw a couple more nails in here because I need to do a little racking, and I need this bottom plate to be held down pretty tight. You can see that's 3/4 of an inch up. I'm going to follow this up with another charge right on top of it. And now it's flush. One safety consideration, if you can think of it, is to load the nail or the projectile before you put the charge in. So that way, smaller chance of something bad happening. So here is sort of a slow motion example of what's actually going on. When you put the nail into the barrel before you do anything else, you're doing that. Then you slide the action closed, you push down on the spring safety mechanism and pull the trigger. And then, if you want to flush, you load the gun, back down on the nail, hold down firmly, and gone. So when I hung those other joists and, you know, blasted up those little shelves that stuck out to hold the ends so I could put the boards in place and then toenail them on the layout, that's one way. These boards are only 6 foot 4 inches long, they don't weigh much, and I don't really care if one drops. So I'm just going to put a hanger nail on one end of these, just about like I did on the 2x12 edge forms that I set back when I was, you know, forming this slab, like this. I'm using 3/4 inch tongue and groove OSB. I like to use that stuff. It stands up to a little bit of rain very nicely, in many cases better than tongue and groove plywood product. But what I want to point out is that I'm using Loctite PL 400 this time instead of liquid nail. I went back and checked some liquid nail under some subfloor a little while ago, and then I've checked this after a couple days, and I like this a little better. I can't tell you exactly why, but it's what I'm using. I'm using 8-penny nails to nail this stuff down on top of the glue, and then I'll come back later when I can catch my breath and throw in a few screws just to make sure that the system that includes nails and glue is backed up by an occasional long decking screw, just to minimize the chance of anything really noisy happening in his shop later. So I had a little monkey motion right here. Turns out there was kind of a bow in the top plate of the wall, which was holding this gable end in far enough that these joists didn't quite want to drop in, and I didn't quite have straight along the crown plate. So in order to sort of hold that, I had to put a line on that exterior, the end of that beam to hold it. Had to temporarily shear wall the end of this bathroom, hold everything where it went, and then drive some shims, oak shims right in here to force that gable end wall out. I don't know how it got sprung so tight, but it doesn't matter because it's fixed now. That end is straight, this is plumb, that is straight, and I'm putting the header in for the stairway right here.
In many ways, what you are watching me do here is not really normal construction at all. It's an almost once-in-a-lifetime experience for me, actually. I'm plying my trade, doing my carpenter work, in order to benefit my darling daughter and her family on a beautiful fall day with good tools and nice material. This day's a gift to me. The trick for us all, I think, is to learn to find the satisfaction that is inherent in the work itself, no matter what we're doing, even when the conditions are far from perfect. To learn to take a much, much longer view of what's really going on when we work. Once again, I'm reminded of Robert Frost's poem, Two Tramps in Mud Time, and the beautiful wisdom in the last stanza. It goes like this: "But yield who will to their separation. My object in living is to unite my avocation and my vocation. As my two eyes make one in sight, only where love and need are one, and the work is play for mortal stakes, is the deed ever really done for heaven and the future's sakes." Thank you for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.